Some people leave the world behind without a word, choosing walls over crowds, calm over noise. They move through evenings unnoticed. While parties and streets pulse with energy they refuse to touch. You may know someone who vanishes into silence, or realize the reflection belongs to you. Their absence is not dramatic. It is quiet, almost imperceptible, yet it alters the space around them. There is a subtle power in choosing stillness, a language of withdrawal that few ever decode. Some patterns reveal themselves only if you watch closely and notice the rhythm beneath the surface. Society often mislabels those who stay home as lonely, unsocial, or unwilling to engage, projecting assumptions onto quiet behavior instead of observing the motives behind it. Friends might describe them as introverted, shy, or fearful, interpreting their preference for solitude as deficiency rather than choice. Family members may feel slighted, believing absence signals disinterest or emotional distance, unaware that the choice is about internal comfort, not rejection. Colleagues can mistake their consistency for lack of ambition, assuming those who avoid social gatherings are disengaged or less committed. Romantic partners often question attachment, reading retreat as avoidance when in reality the individual simply preserves energy and emotional equilibrium. Neighbors and acquaintances may gossip or speculate, filling silence with imagined narratives about personality, character, or hidden flaws in digital spaces. Absence from events is often interpreted as apathy, when it may actually indicate a need for reflection and emotional calibration. Even casual observers project social scripts onto them, expecting display, performance, or visible enthusiasm as proof of belonging. These misreadings accumulate over time, shaping interactions and reinforcing misunderstandings. While the individual experience is consistent, quiet dissonance with external expectations. What appears as resistance is often self-regulation, a conscious or unconscious prioritization of internal rhythm over external demands. Their motives remain hidden, not because they are secretive, but because society lacks the language to understand presence without performance. If you recognize these misreadings in yourself or someone close, reflecting on what assumptions arise can reveal deeper truths about how we interpret human behavior, and perhaps encourage sharing these observations in comments. The next layer of understanding will reveal the subtle psychological architecture that underpins this preference for staying home. Beneath the preference for staying home lies a pattern of emotional self-preservation, where solitude serves as a buffer against overstimulation and fragmented attention. They unconsciously map their environment, weighing energy costs, social expectations, and potential stress before choosing presence or absence. The home becomes a controlled ecosystem, a space where external chaos cannot intrude, and internal rhythms remain uninterrupted. For many, this behavior traces back to early experiences of unpredictability, where comfort and safety were contingent on retreat rather than exposure. Avoiding external events is not avoidance of people, but avoidance of emotional volatility, a learned calibration of personal boundaries. The pattern emerges as a quiet consistency, where repetition reinforces preference, and absence begins to feel natural rather than imposed. They often experience heightened sensitivity, noticing subtle cues in social interactions that others overlook, which can make crowds mentally and emotionally taxing. Time at home allows introspection, creativity, and emotional recovery, functioning as an invisible energy management system that sustains functionality elsewhere. Social withdrawal is not fear, but a strategic allocation of resources, choosing environments that maximize comfort and minimize reactive stress. This pattern quietly shapes decision-making, from declining invitations to modifying routines, without conscious deliberation, as a form of self-regulated stability. The behavior can appear contradictory, as they engage selectively, attending to meaningful gatherings while rejecting others deemed unnecessary, revealing an intricate hierarchy of priorities. Recognizing this pattern illuminates the logic behind choices that often seem inexplicable to outsiders, and prepares us to understand how daily routines are subtly orchestrated. The subtle architecture of their choices will soon be illustrated through real-life scenarios where these patterns manifest in work, relationships, and social spaces. At work, they may decline after-hours events, not from lack of interest, but from understanding the cognitive toll of prolonged social exposure. Meetings with small groups are tolerated with ease, while large gatherings can trigger internal tension, leading to selective engagement and careful energy management. During weekends, while friends seek adventure, they curate experiences at home, valuing the predictability of familiar spaces over external novelty. Family celebrations can become a subtle battleground, where polite excuses mask deeper needs for solitude and personal pacing. Romantic partners often misinterpret quiet evenings at home as disinterest, unaware that the pattern is about balance, not attachment. Arguments can arise not from absence itself, but from perceived imbalance between societal expectations and personal comfort, creating friction in relationships. Evenings alone are not void. They are rich with introspection, creative work, and emotional recalibration that crowds rarely permit. Friendship dynamics shift, as persistent invitations meet consistent refusals, prompting others to adjust expectations or retreat emotionally in social circles. Their calm presence stands in contrast to performative energy, subtly reminding others that visibility is optional, not required. Virtual interactions provide a moderated social outlet, allowing connection without the unpredictable pressures of physical spaces. They may host small, intentional gatherings at home, where intimacy and control coexist, reflecting a nuanced approach to social engagement. Observing their routines, one notices patterns: meals time for comfort, evenings reserved for hobbies, weekends shielded from excessive external demand. Even casual interactions in public are brief, carefully measured, and intentionally bounded to preserve personal rhythm and avoid sensory overload. Travel or outings are often chosen with extreme deliberation, prioritizing emotional and cognitive feasibility over novelty or peer pressure. Through these everyday behaviors, the pattern emerges clearly, revealing how personal space functions as both sanctuary and strategy, shaping the perception of who they are. Understanding these scenarios sets the stage for exploring the psychological mechanisms that naturally underlie this way of interacting with the world. The preference for staying home is rooted in an internal regulation system that prioritizes energy management over social performance, allowing emotional equilibrium to remain intact across daily routines. Neurologically, prolonged social interaction increases cognitive load and stress markers, so retreating becomes a protective mechanism rather than a sign of avoidance or weakness. Introverted processing styles intensify the need for recovery time, making home a psychologically restorative environment where reflection and creativity can occur without interruption. Decision-making is subtly guided by cost-benefit analysis, often unconscious, where the potential reward of an event is weighed against its emotional and cognitive toll. Sensory sensitivity plays a role, with some individuals experiencing amplified responses to noise, movement, and social cues, making crowded environments mentally taxing rather than stimulating. The home environment functions as a control variable, where stimuli are moderated, routines are predictable, and the self can remain uninterrupted by external expectations. Personality traits, such as high conscientiousness and introspective tendencies, correlate with selective social engagement, reinforcing the pattern of strategic withdrawal as a long-term coping mechanism. The pattern also intersects with attachment and early social learning, where experiences of overstimulation or inconsistent support shape a preference for environments where control is possible. Cognitive and emotional rewards are found in self-paced activities, reading, creative work, and hobbies that demand focus, providing fulfillment. Absent in performative social contexts, this pattern is often misinterpreted as social deficiency, when in reality it reflects advanced self-awareness and regulation that sustains overall mental health and functionality. Over time, these mechanisms create a feedback loop, reinforcing the preference for home-based engagement while maintaining capacity for selective participation when truly meaningful or necessary. The psychology behind staying home illuminates a complex interaction of temperament, sensory processing, learned coping strategies, and conscious prioritization of emotional and cognitive stability. These underlying mechanisms naturally affect those around them, subtly influencing social perception and interpersonal dynamics. Friends may feel frustration, interpreting absence as rejection, unaware that the behavior is guided by internal regulation rather than social disinterest. Family members can experience insecurity, questioning the depth of attachment when predictable participation in rituals is missing or minimized. Romantic partners may misread selective engagement as emotional unavailability, creating tension when expectations are based on conventional norms of shared activity. Co-workers may perceive lack of visibility as disengagement or lack of commitment, even though work performance remains consistent and dependable. Social invitations are often interpreted as tests, prompting subtle pressure that can backfire, increasing withdrawal rather than participation. Group dynamics shift as others adjust their behavior to accommodate or compensate for predictable absence, sometimes creating hidden social hierarchies when rituals are expected. The individual's pattern highlights differences in how people value time, energy, and attention, revealing unspoken social contracts. This discrepancy triggers reflection in observers, who may unconsciously compare their own tolerance for stimulation to someone who thrives in solitude. Some attempt persuasion, not realizing that insistence conflicts with the intrinsic need for self-directed pacing and autonomy. Their absence can reveal dependencies in social groups, showing where attention or validation is overly centralized on performative participation. These patterns often spark curiosity or subtle admiration when the logic of withdrawal becomes apparent, challenging assumptions about sociability and fulfillment. If you notice this dynamic in yourself or others, reflecting on how absence and presence shape perception may reveal the unspoken emotional architecture of your social interactions. The next section will uncover the hidden strengths embedded in this pattern, where solitude and selectivity serve as subtle forms of power. Choosing home over constant social engagement cultivates a refined sense of self, where internal priorities guide decisions more than external pressures. This pattern enhances focus, allowing them to pursue creative projects, intellectual exploration, or personal growth without interruption from performative social demands. Emotional resilience is quietly built, as they learn to regulate responses, recover from stress, and maintain stability independently of social validation. Decision-making becomes strategic, with selective engagement ensuring that energy is allocated to interactions that are meaningful, productive, or emotionally sustaining. They develop heightened observational skills, noticing nuances in people, environments, and behaviors that others overlook amidst noise and distraction. Boundaries are sharpened, teaching subtle lessons in consent, respect, and self-determination that others unconsciously absorb through interaction. Their presence in social spaces, when chosen, carries weight, as participation is intentional rather than automatic, signaling reliability and careful thought. Ultimately, the hidden strength lies in autonomy, where the rhythm of life is dictated by inner logic rather than societal expectation, revealing a mastery of personal equilibrium. Yet, like all patterns, this strength has a shadow side, where selective withdrawal may produce unforeseen challenges in relationships and perception. Excessive withdrawal can create distance in relationships, leaving friends and family feeling excluded, uncertain, or unvalued despite intentions of self-preservation. Opportunities for collaboration or spontaneous experiences may be missed, limiting exposure to novelty and the richness of shared human experience. Misinterpretation of motives can escalate into conflict, as others read absence as criticism, judgment, or rejection rather than a personal coping strategy. Isolation may inadvertently reinforce anxiety in social settings, making reintegration increasingly effortful and increasing dependence on controlled environments. Professional visibility can suffer, with peers misjudging commitment, ambition, or reliability due to inconsistent participation in networking and group events. Emotional intimacy can be challenged, as partners or close friends struggle to interpret boundaries and respect selective engagement without feeling disconnected. Patterns of withdrawal can become self-reinforcing, where even minor invitations are declined, amplifying social separation and reducing adaptive flexibility. The dark side of this pattern reminds us that autonomy and comfort can carry social cost, highlighting the delicate balance between self-care and relational connection. Understanding this shadow prepares us to notice the nuances of their choices and the subtle effects on those around them. Even minor social cues can become sources of tension, as observers struggle to reconcile predictable absence with expectations of presence and engagement. Patterns of withdrawal highlight assumptions about sociability, prompting reflection on how we define connection and measure emotional investment in others. Those who prefer home create invisible ripples, shaping social groups without overt direction, subtly influencing dynamics and expectations. Through selective participation, their choices illuminate differences in energy perception, reminding observers that engagement is not uniform, and presence can be qualitative rather than quantitative. Unspoken tensions arise when repeated absence is misread as judgment, causing emotional projections that may be inaccurate but feel real to the perceiver. Reflection on these dynamics often reveals internal biases, showing how we unconsciously impose social scripts on others whose patterns do not match our own. Acknowledging this invites empathy and curiosity, encouraging viewers to consider how silence, absence, and selective engagement can carry meaning beyond immediate visibility. If you recognize these dynamics in yourself or someone close, reflecting on the subtle patterns of withdrawal can deepen understanding of human behavior and encourage sharing your observations in comments. With this understanding of influence and reflection, the final section will reveal how these patterns close in a larger rhythm that shapes perception and interaction. Their rhythm of presence and absence forms a silent architecture, a pattern that others feel even if they cannot name it. Choices of engagement are deliberate, guided by internal logic and emotional calibration, creating consistency that is invisible yet powerful in social perception. Observing this pattern allows one to recognize the balance between autonomy and connection, between refuge and participation, where energy is preserved without complete withdrawal. These behaviors are not flaws, nor eccentricities, but deliberate calibrations of self-preservation, illustrating that human behavior often follows hidden motives rather than visible performance. Awareness of these patterns allows subtle insight into others, teaching us that presence, withdrawal, and quiet decision making are all forms of communication in their own right. This is not judgment, it's a pattern. Subscribe if you want to recognize them before they recognize you.